The morning sun cast long shadows across Fifth Avenue as Maria Rodriguez hurried down the sidewalk, her 2-year-old daughter Sophia balanced on her hip. At 28, Maria's hands were already rough from years of scrubbing floors and polishing silverware in Manhattan's elite apartments. Her navy blue uniform, pressed carefully the night before, was the nicest thing she owned. "Mama, Mama," Sophia's tiny voice chirped as they passed the gleaming storefront of Wonderland Toys, the most exclusive toy shop in the city. The window display was a winter wonderland of mechanical animals, glittering dolls, and castles that seemed plucked from fairy tales. Maria quickened her pace. She was already running late for her morning shift at the Whitmore residence, and Mrs. Whitmore didn't tolerate tardiness. But Sophia twisted in her arms, her chubby fingers pointing insistently at the window. "Dolly! Dolly, Mama!" Maria's heart clenched as she followed her daughter's gaze. There, in the center of the display, sat a porcelain doll with golden curls and a dress of sapphire blue silk. The doll's painted eyes seemed to sparkle with life, and in her delicate hands, she held a tiny teddy bear. It was the most beautiful toy Maria had ever seen. Sophia began to cry, her body rigid with the particular desperation only a 2-year-old can muster. "Want Dolly? Please, Mama, please." People passing by glanced at them, some with sympathy, others with annoyance at the disruption to their morning commute. Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She looked at her phone. 7:47 a.m. She had 13 minutes to get to work, and it was still a 10-minute walk. But Sophia's cries escalated to wails, her little face turning red. Maria had seen her daughter cry for many things, a lost pacifier, tiredness, hunger, but never like this. There was something about the doll that had captured Sophia's imagination completely. "Okay, Mija, okay," Maria whispered, her voice trembling. "We'll just look, okay? Just look." She pushed open the heavy glass door, and a bell chimed softly overhead. The store's interior was like stepping into another world. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers, and the air smelled of cedar and vanilla. The floors were polished marble, and the lighting was gentle and warm. Display cases lined the walls, each containing toys that looked more like works of art than playthings. An impeccably dressed saleswoman approached, her smile professional but cool as she took in Maria's worn shoes and department store coat. "May I help you?" Her tone suggested she doubted it. "My daughter," she saw the doll in the window. "The one with the blue dress." Maria's voice was barely above a whisper. The saleswoman's expression softened slightly as she looked at Sophia, whose tears had stopped the moment they entered the store. The little girl's dark eyes were wide with wonder as she gazed around at the enchanted space. "Ah, yes. The Valentina collection piece. She's exquisite, isn't she? Right this way." They followed her to the window display, where she carefully lifted the doll from its pedestal. Sophia reached out with both hands, making little grabbing motions, but Maria held her back gently. How much is she?" Maria asked, though she already knew the answer would be impossible. The saleswoman turned the doll over, checking a discreet tag near the hem of her dress. "This particular piece is $1,200. The world seemed to tilt. $1,200. Maria made $13 an hour. After rent, utilities, groceries, and Sophia's daycare, she had perhaps $40 left at the end of each month, which she tucked into an envelope marked emergency behind the loose tile in their bathroom. "I see," Maria said quietly. "Thank you for showing us. We should go." But Sophia had other plans. Her daughter lunged forward, her small hands grasping the doll's dress before Maria could stop her. "Mine. My Dolly." "Sophia, no, mi amor, we can't." Maria gently tried to pry her daughter's fingers loose, but Sophia held on with surprising strength, her face crumpling as fresh tears began to fall. "Please, Mama, please. I'd be good. I'd be so good." Maria felt her own eyes burning. This was what broke her. Not the long hours scrubbing bathrooms, not the ache in her back from lifting heavy vacuum cleaners, not even the loneliness of raising a child alone. It was this, her daughter's first real want, and her complete inability to provide it. Across the store, Unnoticed by Maria, a man stood watching. James Chun was 35 years old, CEO of Chun Technologies, worth more than $3 billion. He had come to Wonderland Toys to buy a gift for his own son's second birthday party that afternoon. His shopping bag already contained $500 worth of educational toys his nanny had recommended. He had been about to leave when he heard the little girl's cries. Now he stood frozen, watching as the young mother's face contorted with shame and sorrow, as she whispered apologies in Spanish and English to her weeping daughter, as she carefully peeled tiny fingers from the doll's dress. James watched as Maria kissed Sophia's forehead over and over, murmuring, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Mama will get you something nice, I promise. Maybe for Christmas we can." But they both knew it was a lie. Christmas was 10 months away, and even then, $1,200 would be impossible. As Maria finally succeeded in freeing the doll from Sophia's grasp and handed it back to the saleswoman, something inside James' chin cracked open. He thought of his own son, Daniel, who had more toys than he could play with in a lifetime. He thought of his ex-wife, Rebecca, who had left him 6 months ago, taking Daniel but leaving behind a $5 million divorce settlement. He thought of the emptiness of his penthouse apartment, the silence broken only by the hum of expensive appliances. He thought of his mother, who had come to America from Taiwan with nothing but $200 sewn into her coat lining, who had cleaned houses while his father worked 3 jobs, who had taught him that character was measured not by what you accumulated, but by what you gave. Maria was turning toward the door now, Sophia sobbing against her shoulder, when James made a decision that would change all their lives. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice cutting through Sophia's cries. "Wait, please." Maria turned, her face wet with tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. James walked toward them, and she instinctively straightened, recognizing wealth and power in the cut of his suit, the confidence of his stride. "I couldn't help but overhear," James said gently. "I'm buying a gift for my son's birthday, and I seem to have overpurchase." He glanced at his shopping bag. "I wonder if your daughter might like this doll? I got confused about what I was ordering, and I've already paid for it." It was a transparent lie, and Maria knew it immediately. But there was such kindness in this stranger's eyes, such genuine warmth, that she didn't know how to respond. I can't accept that," Maria said, even as her heart screamed at her to take it, to let her daughter have this one beautiful thing. "Please," James said softly. "It would make me happy. Actually," he paused, and Maria saw something vulnerable flash across his face. "It would help me feel less alone in the world." Is that strange to say? Before Maria could answer, the saleswoman appeared with the doll in a beautiful box, wrapped in silver paper and tied with a blue ribbon. She handed it not to James, but directly to Sophia. "For the little princess," she said, and Maria realized that this woman, too, had been moved by the scene she'd witnessed. Sophia's cries stopped instantly. She clutched the box to her chest, her eyes huge and shining. "Dolly? Mine?" "Yes, sweetheart," James said, crouching down to her level. "She's yours." Sophia looked at her mother, seeking permission. Maria felt paralyzed, torn between pride and practicality, between shame and gratitude. Finally, she nodded. "What do we say?" Maria prompted gently. "Thank you," Sophia whispered, then more boldly. "Thank you." James smiled, and Maria saw that his eyes were suspiciously bright. "You're very welcome." Maria knew she should leave, should take this gift and disappear into the crowded streets before things became more complicated. But something made her stay, made her meet this stranger's eyes. "Why?" she asked simply. James was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because I remember what it's like to want something beautiful for the person you love and not be able to afford it. Because your daughter deserves magic in her life. Because..." He hesitated. "Because I think we all need to be reminded that kindness matters." Maria felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading that had nothing to do with the heated store. "I don't even know your name." "James Chen." He extended his hand, and Maria shook it, feeling the softness of someone who had never scrubbed a floor. "Maria Rodriguez. And this is Sophia." Hello, Sophia. James smiled at the little girl, who was now trying to peek through the wrapping paper. I hope you and your dolly have wonderful adventures together. As Maria finally left the store, Sophia clutching her precious gift, she was already 20 minutes late for work. Mrs. Whitmore would dock her pay or possibly fire her altogether. But as she hurried down the street, she felt lighter than she had in years. Behind her, James Chin stood in the toy shop, watching through the window as the young mother and daughter disappeared into the Manhattan morning. His chest felt tight, his eyes stinging. He had given away a toy, a simple thing that meant nothing to him financially. But somehow, he felt as though he had received something far more valuable in return. The saleswoman appeared at his elbow. That was very kind of you, Mr. Chin. James pulled out his wallet, handing her his Black American Express card. Could you charge me for the doll, please? And he paused, making another impulsive decision. Could you tell me if that woman returns to the store? I'd like to help if she needs anything else. The saleswoman smiled. Of course, Mr. Chin. As James left Wonderland Toys, the shopping bag for his son's party felt heavier than before. He thought about Daniel, who would barely notice one more toy among the mountains of gifts he'd receive. He thought about the joy on Sophia's face, the tears in Maria's eyes. And for the first time since his divorce, James Chun felt like maybe, just maybe, he could become the man his mother had raised him to be. Maria arrived at the Whitmore residence 32 minutes late, out of breath, and expecting the worst. Mrs. Whitmore, a sharp-featured woman in her 60s, met her at the service entrance with crossed arms and a look that could freeze water. Mrs. Rodriguez, you are aware that your shift begins at 8 o'clock? Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. My daughter. I don't pay you to prioritize your personal life during working hours. Mrs. Whitmore's voice was ice. This is your second tardiness this month. It won't happen again, I promise. Maria clutched her bag, feeling the weight of the boxed doll inside. Sophia was at her neighbor's apartment, Mrs. Chun, no relation to James, an elderly Chinese woman who watched Sophia for a fraction of what proper daycare would cost. Mrs. Whitmore sighed. I'm deducting an hour's pay. Now please, the guest bathroom needs attention before Mr. Whitmore's business associates arrive at noon. Maria nodded and hurried to the service closet, grateful she still had a job. As she gathered her cleaning supplies, she thought about the man in the toy store. James Chun. She wondered what kind of life he led, what made a billionaire spend his morning in a toy shop, what had put that look of loneliness in his eyes when he said he wanted to feel less alone. The morning passed in a blur of bleach and furniture polish. By lunchtime, Maria's back ached, and her hands were raw from scrubbing. She took her 15-minute break in the small staff room off the kitchen, eating the peanut butter sandwich she'd packed while checking her phone. There was a text from Mrs. Chin. Sophia is playing with her new doll. She hasn't put it down once. Where did it come from? Maria smiled, typing back. A miracle. She thought about telling her neighbor the truth, that a stranger had bought her daughter a $1,000 doll, but who would believe it? Maria herself could barely believe it had happened. Meanwhile, across Manhattan, James Chin sat in his corner office on the 47th floor of Chin Tower, unable to focus on the quarterly reports spread across his desk. His assistant, Patricia, had noticed his distraction during the morning meeting. Mr. Chin, did you want to review the Matsumoto contract again? James looked up, realizing he'd been staring out the window for the past 10 minutes. I'm sorry, Patricia. My mind is elsewhere today. Is everything all right with Daniel? Patricia had been with him for 8 years, had witnessed the divorce, had helped him navigate single fatherhood when Rebecca moved to California with their son. Daniel's fine. He's with Rebecca this week. James set down his pen. Patricia, do you ever think about the moment that defines who you are? His assistant blinked, surprised by the philosophical question. I suppose everyone has those moments, yes. I think I had one this morning. James stood, walking to the window. From here, Manhattan looked like a toy city itself, full of tiny people living tiny lives. I met a woman and her daughter in a toy shop. They couldn't afford a doll the little girl wanted, so I bought it for them. That's very kind of you. Was it? James turned to face her. Or was it self-indulgent? A billionaire playing savior to make himself feel better about his empty life. Patricia was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Mr. Chun, kindness doesn't become less kind because it also makes the giver feel good. That little girl has a doll she loves. Her mother has one less burden. Those are real things, regardless of your motivations. James nodded slowly. I can't stop thinking about them. The mother, Maria, she worked so hard. You could see it in her hands, in the way she moved. And she was so ashamed that she couldn't afford something her daughter wanted. Did you get her contact information?
No.
I didn't want to make it transactional, you know? I wasn't trying to. I don't know what I was trying to do. James ran a hand through his hair. Cancel my afternoon meetings. I need to think. Patricia raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. All of them. All of them. Tell the board I'm taking a personal day. It's been years since I've taken one. They'll survive. After Patricia left, James stood at the window, watching the city pulse with life below. He thought about his mother, who had passed away 5 years ago. She would have loved Maria's dignity, the way she had tried to refuse his help even as her heart was breaking for her daughter. His phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Daniel is excited about his party tomorrow. Will you be there? James felt the familiar guilt settle over him. He had missed Daniel's last 2 birthday parties due to business travel. He'd promised himself this year would be different. Wouldn't miss it, he typed back. Then, on impulse, he added, Can I bring someone? The 3 dots appeared then. Who? James stared at the phone. What was he doing? He barely knew Maria Rodriguez. She was his employee in the most indirect sense. He owned the building where the Whitmores lived, which technically made him her employer's landlord. But that was a technicality. A potential business associate. He lied, then immediately felt terrible about it.
Sure.
The more the merrier. James set down his phone and did something he hadn't done in years. He left the office at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He walked out past stunned employees, past Patricia's knowing smile, into the crisp Manhattan air. He found himself walking toward the neighborhood where Wonderland Toys was located, though he didn't know why. What did he expect to find? Maria wouldn't be there. She was probably working, scrubbing someone's floor while her daughter played with the doll he'd bought. But as he turned onto Fifth Avenue, he saw something that made him stop. There, sitting on a bench outside a coffee shop, was Maria. She was eating a sandwich, her cleaning uniform visible under her open coat. Her eyes were closed, and her face was tilted toward the weak winter sun. James felt like he'd been caught doing something wrong, though he couldn't articulate what. He started to turn away, to leave her in peace, but something made him walk forward instead. Maria? Her eyes snapped open, and for a moment, she looked confused. Then recognition dawned, followed by what looked like embarrassment. Mr. Chun. What are you? She stood quickly, nearly dropping her sandwich. Please don't get up. James gestured to the bench. I'm sorry to intrude. I was just walking. In this neighborhood? Maria's tone was skeptical. People like James Chin didn't just walk through this part of town. James smiled sheepishly. I'm playing hooky from work. First time in 5 years. Something in his honesty made Maria relax slightly. She sat back down, and after a moment's hesitation, James joined her. They sat in silence for a moment, watching people pass by. Finally, Maria spoke. Sophia hasn't put the doll down since this morning. She named her Luna. She made me tell her the story about you, the nice man in the toy store, 3 times before nap time. I'm glad she's enjoying it. James found himself smiling. My son has a birthday party tomorrow. He'll have so many gifts he won't know what to do with them all. That must be nice. Maria's tone wasn't bitter, just observational. Is it? James turned to look at her. Daniel is 2 years old. He doesn't need 50 toys. He needs his father, and I give him everything but my time. Maria was quiet, then said, At least he has a father who cares enough to feel guilty about it. Sophia's father left before she was born. Didn't want the responsibility. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off without him. Maria finished her sandwich, crumpling the wrapper. I should get back to work. My break is over in 2 minutes. Where do you work? Maria hesitated. The Whitmore residence. 4 blocks from here. The Whitmores in Chin Tower? James felt something click in his mind. You own that building? Maria's face paled. Oh God, please don't. My being late this morning, please don't tell Mrs. Whitmore. I need this job. Maria, no, I would never. James reached out instinctively, then stopped himself. I'm not here to spy on you or report you. I'm here because… He trailed off. Why was he here? Because? Maria prompted, her dark eyes searching his face. Because you reminded me that there are people in this world who work 3 times harder than I do for 1/100th of the reward. Because your daughter's joy this morning was the first genuine emotion I've witnessed in months. Because… He took a breath. Because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who want something from me, and you're the first person in years who wanted nothing at all. Maria stood up slowly. Mr. Chun, I appreciate what you did this morning. Truly. But I think you're romanticizing the situation. I'm not some noble working-class hero. I'm just a woman trying to survive, trying to give my daughter a better life than I had. And you're a billionaire playing at understanding what that's like. Her words stung because they were partially true. But only partially. You're right, James said quietly. I can't understand what your life is like. But I can recognize strength when I see it. I can recognize grace. And I can recognize someone who deserves better than what life has given her. Better? Maria's voice rose slightly. You think buying my daughter a doll makes you understand what better means? Better would be a living wage. Better would be health care I can actually afford. Better would be childcare that doesn't cost more than my rent. Better would be… She stopped herself, closing her eyes. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. No, James said firmly. It was honest. And you're absolutely right. Maria looked at him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, a small, sad smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You seem like a good man, Mr. Chun. But we live in different worlds. This morning was a gift. A moment of magic in my daughter's life. But it's not reality. Reality is me being late getting back to work and losing another hour's pay. She started to walk away, then paused and turned back. Thank you again. For Luna. Sophia will treasure her. James watched her go, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. The desire to be better, to do better, to be worthy of someone's respect. Not because of his money or his success, but because of who he was as a person. He pulled out his phone and called Patricia. I need you to research something for me. Living wages, healthcare access, affordable childcare, everything about the challenges facing working mothers in New York City. I want a full report by Monday morning. Mr. Chun? Patricia sounded confused. Is this for a new business venture? Maybe, James said. Or maybe it's just time I use my resources for something that actually matters. After he hung up, James remained on the bench, watching the flow of humanity pass by. Nannies pushing expensive strollers, executives in $1,000 suits, delivery workers rushing from one location to the next, students with backpacks, tourists with cameras. Everyone with their own story, their own struggles, their own dreams. For years, James had moved through this city seeing only business opportunities and obstacles. Buildings were assets to acquire, people were resources to manage, problems were equations to solve. But this morning, in a toy shop on 5th Avenue, a 2-year-old girl had reminded him what he'd forgotten, that behind every face was a heart that could break and heal, that every small kindness rippled outward in ways you could never predict, that money could buy many things but not the ones that truly mattered. As the sun began to set behind the towers of Manhattan, James Chin made a decision. He didn't know yet what form it would take or how it would unfold. But he knew that his encounter with Maria Rodriguez was not going to be a single moment of charity, quickly forgotten. It was going to be the beginning of something larger, something that would challenge him to become the man his mother had believed he could be. The man he had stopped trying to be when the pursuit of wealth became more important than the purpose of wealth. The man who might finally understand that true success wasn't measured in stock prices and quarterly earnings, but in the number of lives you touched and the difference you made in the world. In her small apartment 3 miles away, Maria tucked Sophia into bed, the new doll clutched in her sleeping daughter's arms. As she turned off the light, she thought about James Chun and wondered if their paths would ever cross again. She hoped not. Hope, after all, was the most dangerous thing for people like her. Hope made you vulnerable. Hope made you forget that fairy tales didn't happen to cleaning ladies from the Bronx. But as she drifted off to sleep on the couch that doubled as her bed, Maria dreamed of toy shops and kind strangers and a world where hard work was rewarded with more than just survival. And 3 miles away, in a penthouse that cost more per month than Maria made in a year, James Chun lay awake, staring at the ceiling, planning how to turn a chance encounter into lasting change for Maria, for Sophia, and for himself. The universe, it seemed, had a plan, and neither of them could see yet how profoundly their lives were about to intertwine. Saturday morning arrived with a kind of crystal clarity that makes Manhattan look like it was designed for a movie. James woke early, a habit from years of starting his day with overseas markets. But today, for the first time in months, he felt something beyond the routine anxiety about stock prices and board meetings. He felt anticipation. Daniel's birthday party started at 2 o'clock. Rebecca had organized it at an exclusive children's venue in Tribeca. Indoor rock climbing, a petting zoo, face painting, and a magician. The guest list included 20 children from Daniel's elite preschool and their parents, all of whom moved in Rebecca's social circles. James usually dreaded these events, spending hours making small talk with people who only wanted to discuss their portfolio or pitch their startup. But this time, James had a plan. After his encounter with Maria yesterday, he had gone home and thought about what Patricia had said. Kindness doesn't become less kind because it also makes the giver feel good. He thought about Maria's anger, her frustration at a system that worked against people like her. And he realized that buying one doll for one child, while meaningful, was not enough. He needed to understand Maria's world better. And the only way to do that was to invite her into his. The problem was, he had no way to contact her. He knew she worked for the Whitmores, but calling them to ask for their maid's phone number seemed inappropriate and creepy. He had walked by Wonderland Toys yesterday evening, hoping the saleswoman might have some information, but the store was closed, which left him with one option that he knew was probably crossing a line. He could go to the Whitmore residence and ask to speak with her. At 10 o'clock, James found himself standing outside Chin Tower, looking up at the 32nd floor where the Whitmores lived. His phone buzzed with messages from Patricia, asking about Monday's schedule. His lawyer had sent 3 emails about a merger. His accountant needed signatures on tax documents. But none of it seemed to matter. He took the private elevator to the 32nd floor, one of the perks of owning the building, and walked to the Whitmore's door. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. What was he doing? Showing up unannounced at a tenant's apartment to ask to speak to their housekeeper? This was insane. But before he could talk himself out of it, the door opened. Mrs. Whitmore stood there in tennis whites, about to leave, and her eyes went wide with surprise. Mr. Chun, is something wrong with the building? No, nothing like that. James tried to project confidence he didn't feel. I apologize for the intrusion. I was wondering if I might speak with Maria Rodriguez? I understand she works for you. Mrs. Whitmore's expression shifted from surprise to confusion to something that looked like suspicion. Maria? May I ask what this is about? James had prepared for this question. I'm organizing a charitable initiative focused on supporting working parents in the city. Maria's name came up through our research, and I wanted to speak with her about possibly participating in a focus group. It wasn't technically a lie. James had been up until 2 in the morning reading about wage inequality and childcare costs. He did plan to launch some kind of initiative, though the details were still forming. Mrs. Whitmore's expression softened slightly. How civic-minded of you. Maria is here actually finishing up the kitchen. I'm headed to the club, but you're welcome to come in and speak with her. Just please be quick. I don't want to pay her for time spent chatting. The casual cruelty of the comment made James's jaw tighten, but he forced a smile. Of course. Thank you. Mrs. Whitmore led him through the apartment, a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows and artwork that probably cost more than Maria made in 5 years. He could hear water running in the kitchen. "Maria," Mrs. Whitmore called out. "Someone here to see you. Make it quick, please." Then she was gone, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume in her wake. James walked into the kitchen and found Maria at the sink, yellow rubber gloves on her hands, scrubbing a baking dish. She turned at the sound of footsteps, and her eyes went wide. "Mr. Chen? What are you? How did you?" She pulled off the gloves quickly, looking panicked. "Did I do something wrong? Is this about yesterday?" "No, please don't worry." James held up his hands in a calming gesture. "I'm sorry to show up like this. I know it's strange. But I wanted to ask you something, and I didn't have your contact information." Maria glanced toward the hallway, as if worried Mrs. Whitmore might return. "Ask me what?" "It's my son's birthday party today. I know this is incredibly presumptuous, but I was wondering if you and Sophia might like to come." Maria stared at him like he'd suggested they fly to the moon.
What?
"I know how it sounds. But yesterday, when you talked about how my son would be buried in gifts he doesn't need, it made me think. Daniel doesn't need more toys. He needs to understand that there are children who have less, who would treasure a single doll the way Sophia treasures Luna. I thought maybe—" James trailed off, realizing how ridiculous this sounded. "I thought maybe it would be good for him to meet Sophia. To see that friendship isn't about what you have, but who you are." Maria's expression was hard to read. "Mr. Chen, with all due respect, I'm not interested in having my daughter be your son's charity case. We're not a teaching moment." "That's not what I meant," James started, but Maria cut him off. "Isn't it? You want your son to meet the poor little girl whose mother cleans toilets for a living? To make him grateful for what he has? To make yourself feel good about bridging economic divides?" Her voice was rising, and she seemed to realize it, glancing nervously at the door again. "I appreciate what you did yesterday, Mr. Chen, but I think you're confused about what this is." "What is this, then?" James asked quietly. "It's you having a midlife crisis and deciding that fixing my problems will make you feel better about your own life." The words landed like a slap, but James couldn't argue with them. Wasn't that partially true? Hadn't he been thinking exactly those thoughts yesterday? "You're right," he said finally. "I am having some kind of crisis. And yes, meeting you and Sophia has made me question things about my life. But that doesn't mean my invitation isn't genuine. Daniel's party is going to be full of people who think friendship is about who has the best toys and whose parents have the biggest apartment. For once, I'd like him to meet someone real. Someone like Sophia." "Sophia is 2 years old, Mr. Chen. She's not a prop for your son's moral education." "I know that. And I'm sorry if I made it sound that way." James took a breath. "Look, forget about Daniel. I'm inviting you because I'd like to get to know you better. Because I think we could be friends." "Is that so hard to believe?" Maria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Friends? We're not friends, Mr. Chen. We can't be friends. You own buildings. I clean them. You buy toys that cost more than my monthly rent. I work 3 jobs to afford a 1-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. We exist in completely different worlds. That doesn't mean those worlds can't intersect." "Intersect, maybe. But merge?"
No.
Maria turned back to the sink, pulling her gloves back on. "Thank you for the invitation, but I think it's better if we go back to our respective lives. Yesterday was nice, but it wasn't real life." James watched her scrub the dish with unnecessary force, and he knew he should leave. She was right, this was inappropriate, crossing lines that existed for good reasons. But something made him stay. "What if I told you that I haven't felt this alive in years?" he said quietly. "What if I told you that for the first time since my mother died, I feel like I'm doing something that would make her proud? What if I told you that seeing Sophia's joy yesterday reminded me why I started working in the first place? Not to accumulate wealth, but to make the world better." Maria's hands stilled in the soapy water. She didn't turn around, but James saw her shoulders tense. "And what happens when you get bored?" she asked softly. "When this feeling wears off and you go back to your billion-dollar deals and I go back to scrubbing floors? What happens to Sophia when she gets used to having a wealthy friend who takes her to birthday parties and then he disappears? Have you thought about that? James had thought about it. All night he'd thought about it. And he didn't have a good answer because she was right. He had a track record of starting things with enthusiasm and abandoning them when they got difficult or boring. He'd done it with hobbies, with relationships, with philanthropic efforts that had seemed important at the time. But this felt different. Maria felt different. I don't have a perfect answer, James admitted. I don't know what this is or where it's going. But I know that walking away right now, pretending yesterday didn't happen, that feels wrong. And for once in my life, I'd like to do what feels right instead of what's safe or practical. Maria finally turned around, and James was surprised to see tears in her eyes. Do you know what happens to people like me when we hope for too much? We get hurt. We get disappointed. We get reminded that fairy tales are for people who can afford them. Then let me prove you wrong. James heard the desperation in his own voice. One birthday party. 2 hours of your time. If it's awful, if I'm wrong about this, I'll never bother you again. But if I'm right, if there's something here worth exploring, then maybe we both get something we didn't know we needed. Maria wiped her eyes with the back of her gloved hand, leaving a soap bubble on her cheek. Despite the tension, James found himself smiling. You have soap on your face. She touched her cheek, then actually laughed, a real laugh this time. God, this is insane. You're insane. Probably. But will you come? Maria looked at him for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and checked the time. I get off work at 1. The party starts at 2. Yes. In Tribeca. I can send a car. No cars. Sophia, and I will take the subway like always. Text me the address. She pulled a pen from her pocket and wrote her number on a paper towel. And Mr. Chen? If this turns out to be a mistake, if you hurt my daughter in any way, I will make you regret it. Billionaire or not. James took the paper towel like it was made of gold. I believe you. And please call me James. I'll call you Mr. Chen until you prove you're worth calling by your first name. Despite her sharp words, James saw a smile tugging at the corner of Maria's mouth. That's fair, he said. I'll see you at 2. As James left the apartment, his heart was pounding like he'd just run a marathon. He felt like a teenager who'd just been given a phone number by his crush. Which was ridiculous. He was a 35-year-old billionaire, not a lovesick adolescent. But as he rode the elevator down, he couldn't stop smiling. He texted Patricia. Change of plans for the party. We're going to make it more inclusive. Her response was immediate. Dare I ask what that means? Trust me, James typed back. For once in my life, I'm following my gut. In the Whitmore kitchen, Maria finished the dishes in a daze. What had she just agreed to? Taking Sophia to a birthday party for rich children in Tribeca? What was she thinking? She thought about calling and canceling, about texting James Chen and telling him she'd changed her mind. But then she thought about Sophia's face when she'd held that doll, about the wonder in her daughter's eyes. She thought about how rare it was for Sophia to experience anything beyond their small apartment and the crowded daycare. And she thought about the look in James Chen's eyes when he'd said he hadn't felt this alive in years. Because if she was being honest with herself, neither had she. Maybe that was worth the risk. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't end in disaster. As Maria packed up her cleaning supplies and prepared to leave, Mrs. Whitmore returned from the hallway, having apparently forgotten something. What did Mr. Chen want? She asked, her tone curious. Maria kept her voice neutral. He's doing research on working parents in the city. Just wanted to ask me some questions. How strange. Well, I suppose the wealthy have their eccentric hobbies. Mrs. Whitmore picked up her tennis racket. You can go. See you Monday. As Maria left the building, she realized that Mrs. Whitmore would never understand why James Chen had really been there. Because to people like the Whitmores, people like Maria were invisible, just part of the machinery that kept their comfortable lives running smoothly. But James Chen had seen her. Really seen her. That, Maria thought as she headed home to get Sophia ready, was either going to be the most wonderful or the most dangerous thing that had ever happened to her. She just didn't know which yet. The birthday party venue was called Imagination Station, and it looked like someone had designed it specifically to make Maria feel out of place. The entrance was all glass and chrome, with a doorman in a uniform that probably cost more than her winter coat. Through the windows, Maria could see children running around in designer outfits that their parents had likely bought without checking the price tags. She stood on the sidewalk, holding Sophia's hand, seriously considering turning around and going home. "Mama, pretty house." Sophia tugged on her hand, pointing at the balloons tied to the doorway. "It's not a house, baby. It's a party place." Maria took a breath. She'd come this far. She'd spent an hour getting Sophia ready, putting her in the nicest dress they owned, a $15 pink thing from Target that looked shabby compared to what she could see through the windows. She'd done Sophia's hair in 2 neat braids, tied with the ribbons from Luna's gift box. And Sophia had insisted on bringing Luna, of course. The doll was clutched in her arms now, still wearing her sapphire blue dress. "Okay," Maria whispered to herself. "You can do this. It's just a birthday party." She pushed through the door, and immediately the noise hit her. Children shrieking with delight, parents laughing, music pumping from speakers. A young woman in black pants and a white shirt approached with a tablet. "Name for the guest list?" "Maria Rodriguez and Sophia." The woman scrolled through her tablet, frowning. Then her face cleared. "Oh, you're Mr. Chen's special guests. He left specific instructions." She smiled warmly, and Maria felt some of her tension ease. "Right this way." They were led through the main party area, a converted warehouse space with soaring ceilings and industrial chic decor. There was indeed a rock-climbing wall, a small petting zoo with bunnies and a miniature pony, face-painting stations, and what looked like a craft area. In the center was a huge birthday cake in the shape of a castle. Children ran everywhere, and Maria noticed that Sophia was right. This did look like a pretty house, or at least a pretty fantasy land. Then she saw James. He was crouched down next to a small boy, Daniel, presumably, showing him something on his phone. When he looked up and saw Maria, his face broke into a smile that made her heart do something complicated in her chest. "You came," he said, standing up. He was dressed casually today, jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget, but at least he wasn't in a suit. "I said I would." Maria was aware of people staring at her, specifically at her worn coat and Sophia's simple dress. She fought the urge to explain, to apologize, to run. "I'm so glad." James looked at Sophia, who was hiding slightly behind Maria's leg. "And you must be Sophia. I've heard so much about you and Luna." Sophia peeked out, then held up her doll shyly. "Luna. She's beautiful. Daniel, come here. I want you to meet someone." The little boy, a chubby-cheeked child with James's dark hair and what must be his mother's blue eyes, came over reluctantly. He was clutching some kind of electronic toy that was making beeping sounds. "Daniel, this is Sophia. She's 2 years old, just like you." Daniel looked at Sophia with the blunt curiosity of a toddler. "Hi." "Hi," Sophia whispered back. There was an awkward moment where neither child seemed to know what to do next. Then Sophia held out Luna. "Look, my dolly." Daniel's eyes widened. "Pretty." He reached out to touch the doll's dress, and Sophia let him, which Maria took as a good sign. "Want to play?" Sophia asked. Just like that, the ice was broken. The 2 children wandered off toward the craft table, and Maria watched them go with a mixture of relief and anxiety. "See," James said quietly. "That wasn't so bad." "The night is young," Maria replied, but she was smiling slightly. "Come on. Let me introduce you to some people." "James, I don't think," but he was already guiding her toward a group of adults who were watching their children with the casual inattention of people who had paid someone else to manage the actual party. "Everyone, this is Maria Rodriguez and her daughter Sophia. Maria, this is, well, these are Daniel's preschool parents." The adults turned to look at Maria, and she saw the moment they categorized her. Not one of them. She saw it in their polite but distant smiles, in the way their eyes flickered over her coat and shoes. "How do you know James?" one woman asked. She was blonde, polished, with a kind of studied casualness that took hours to achieve. "We met at a toy store," James said before Maria could answer. Maria was buying a gift for Sophia, and we started chatting. It wasn't quite a lie, but it wasn't quite the truth either. Maria appreciated that he was trying to smooth the way, but it also reinforced what she tried to tell him. They came from different worlds, and pretending otherwise was just going to make things awkward. "How nice," the woman said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "Which preschool does Sophia attend?" "She's in daycare. In the Bronx." Maria's voice was steady, but she felt like she was being interviewed. The Bronx. How adventurous. Before Maria could respond, a stunning woman in designer clothes approached, her face a mask of barely controlled annoyance. James's expression shifted, and Maria understood immediately. This was Rebecca, Daniel's mother. "James, can I speak with you?" "Privately?" Rebecca's eyes flickered over Maria dismissively. "Rebecca, this is Maria Rodriguez." "Maria, this is Rebecca, Daniel's mother." "Charmed," Rebecca said in a tone that was anything but. "James now, please." James looked at Maria apologetically. "I'll be right back." Maria watched them walk away, Rebecca's hand on James's arm, her posture radiating ownership. She heard a woman next to her whisper to her companion, "I wonder if she's the new nanny? James must be trying out candidates." The humiliation burned, but Maria kept her face neutral. This was a mistake. She should grab Sophia and leave before. "Hi there. I'm Patricia." Maria turned to find a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. Unlike the others, she extended her hand for a real handshake. "I'm James's assistant. He's told me about you." "He has?" Maria was surprised. "He came back from that toy store adventure, like a different person. I've worked for him for 8 years, and I've never seen him as animated as he's been the last 2 days." Maria didn't know what to say to that. Patricia lowered her voice. "Don't let the ice queens get to you. They're just surprised to see James showing interest in someone who isn't part of their social circle. It's making them nervous." "Why would they be nervous?" "Because you're real, and they're not sure how to deal with that." Across the room, James was having a heated discussion with Rebecca. "What are you doing, James?" "Inviting some random woman and her child to our son's party." "Maria is not random. And it's Daniel's party. He should have the chance to meet children from different backgrounds." "Different backgrounds?" Rebecca's laugh was sharp. "She's clearly not one of us. The other mothers are already whispering. You're embarrassing yourself." "No, Rebecca. I'm finally doing something I should have done years ago, teaching our son that people have value beyond their bank accounts." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "Is this about what I think it's about? Are you trying to prove something to me? Because hiring a maid to play dress-up at Daniel's party isn't going to make me regret divorcing you. This has nothing to do with you. For once, not everything is about you." "Then what is it about? Some midlife crisis? A billionaire's guilt trip?" Rebecca crossed her arms. "That woman is going to get hurt, James. You're playing in her life like it's one of your business experiments, and when you get bored or when it gets complicated, you'll move on. And she'll be left explaining to her daughter why the rich man stopped calling." James felt the words hit home because he'd had the same thought himself. But he pushed back anyway. "You don't know what this is." "Don't I? I was married to you for 5 years, James. I know exactly what this is. You're trying to be the hero your mother wanted you to be, but you're not built for this kind of life. You're built for boardrooms and profit margins, not for playing savior to struggling single mothers." "Maybe I'm tired of the person I'm built to be." Rebecca's expression softened slightly. "Then change. Really change. But don't use that woman and her child as props in your personal transformation." As James walked back to Maria, Rebecca's words echoed in his mind. Was that what he was doing? Using Maria to feel better about himself? But when he saw Maria standing awkwardly with Patricia, clearly uncomfortable but trying to hide it, when he saw Sophia and Daniel actually playing together, sharing crayons at the craft table, laughing about something only 2-year-olds could find funny, he felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't about him. Or, at least, it wasn't just about him. "Sorry about that," James said when he reached Maria. Rebecca was just establishing boundaries, Maria finished. I get it. This is her son's party, and I'm an interloper. No, you're Mr. Chin. Maria's voice was quiet but firm. Can I be honest with you? Please. I don't belong here. I'm wearing a coat I bought at a thrift store, and my daughter's dress cost $15. Everyone is looking at me like I'm the help who wandered in by mistake. And you know what? They're not wrong. In their world, I am the help. Maria? Let me finish. She took a breath. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I think you genuinely want to bridge some gap to show your son that there are different kinds of people in the world. But you can't just snap your fingers and make those differences disappear. I'm not Cinderella, and you're not my fairy godmother. James was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You're right. I can't make the differences disappear. And I shouldn't try to pretend they don't exist. But that doesn't mean we can't be friends. Friends. Maria tested the word. Do you know how many rich people have tried to be friends with me? My boss's daughter, who wanted to write a profile about me for her college sociology class. A woman at Sophia's daycare who thought it would be educational for her son to have a playdate with a child from a less privileged background. A man who wanted to feel good about himself by mentoring me. She met his eyes. They all meant well. They all eventually disappeared when it got too real or too complicated. I'm not them. Prove it. The challenge hung in the air between them. Then, to Maria's surprise, James nodded. Okay. How? Maria thought for a moment. Then she said, Come to my world. Not as a billionaire on a charity mission. As a person. Come see how Sophia and I really live. Have dinner in my tiny apartment. Take the subway with us. See what it's like when you can't just throw money at problems. When Maria had expected him to make excuses, to say he was too busy. You're serious? Completely. When? Tomorrow. Sunday. 5 o'clock. I'll text you the address. She was calling his bluff. She was sure of it. I'll be there. They stared at each other, and Maria felt something electric pass between them, a challenge accepted, a boundary crossed, a possibility opening up that neither of them fully understood yet. The moment was broken by Daniel running over, pulling Sophia by the hand. Daddy. Sophia wants to pet the bunny, but she's scared. Come with us. Me too. Sophia added, looking up at Maria with pleading eyes. James and Maria exchanged a glance, then followed their children to the petting zoo. As they walked, James said quietly, I'm scared too, you know. Of what? Bunnies. Of messing this up. Of being the kind of person Rebecca thinks I am. Of disappointing you and Sophia. Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Then don't mess it up. Don't disappoint us. Be better. I'll try. At the petting zoo, they watched their children attempt to be brave around the animals. Daniel shrieked when a bunny hopped toward him. Sophia dropped Luna in her excitement and had to be reminded to pick her up. Both children were covered in glitter from face painting and had icing on their faces from cake. And for just a moment, watching them play, Maria allowed herself to hope. Not that James Chin was going to save her, or fix her life, or be her fairy tale ending. But that maybe, just maybe, he was exactly what he seemed to be, a flawed, struggling person trying to be better, just like she was. As the party wound down, James walked Maria and Sophia to the subway station, despite her protests. You don't have to. I want to, remember? I'm coming to your world tomorrow. Might as well start practicing. At the station entrance, Sophia surprised everyone by throwing her arms around Daniel in a goodbye hug. Bye-bye. Friend. Friend. Daniel agreed, squeezing her back. Thank you for inviting us, Maria said formally. Sophia had a wonderful time. Thank you for coming. And for giving me a chance. As Maria and Sophia descended into the subway station, James stood watching until they disappeared from sight. Then he turned and saw Patricia waiting with the car. That looked intense, she observed. I'm going to her apartment for dinner tomorrow. Patricia raised her eyebrows. Are you sure that's wise? Probably not. But I'm doing it anyway. Well then. Patricia smiled. I suppose I should clear your Sunday evening calendar. Clear Monday too.
And Tuesday.
I have a feeling I'm going to need to do a lot of thinking. As the car drove James home through Manhattan's glittering streets, he thought about Rebecca's warning. She was right that he had a history of starting things he didn't finish. But she was wrong about one thing. This wasn't about playing savior or easing his guilt. This was about Maria challenging him to see the world differently, to understand that wealth was meaningless if it didn't serve some purpose beyond accumulation. To remember that behind every face, every person scrubbing floors, delivering packages, serving coffee, was a complete human being with dreams and fears and dignity that deserved respect. His mother had known that. She had never forgotten her roots, never let success make her forget what struggle felt like. And now, maybe, James was finally learning the lessons she'd tried to teach him before she died. In the subway car heading to the Bronx, Sophia fell asleep against Maria's shoulder, still clutching Luna. Maria looked at her daughter's peaceful face and felt a complex swirl of emotions, hope and fear, excitement and anxiety, the sense that her life had just tilted in a direction she couldn't predict. Tomorrow, James Chin would come to her home. He would see her worn furniture and her tiny kitchen and her bathroom with the loose tile. He would see how she really lived, without filters or pretense. And then they would both know if this, whatever this was, had any chance of being real. Maria closed her eyes and allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, that fairy tales might happen to people like her after all. Sunday afternoon, Maria cleaned her apartment for the third time. She knew it was ridiculous. James had seen her scrubbing other people's toilets, for God's sake, but she couldn't help herself. She wanted her home to reflect her pride, her dignity, even if it was small and shabby. The apartment was a one-bedroom in a building that had seen better days, probably around the time of the Ford administration. The bedroom was Sophia's. Maria slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. The kitchen was barely bigger than a closet, with appliances that predated the internet. The bathroom had that loose tile that Maria kept meaning to fix but never had time for. The walls were thin enough that she could hear her neighbor's television and the family upstairs arguing in Spanish. But it was clean. And it was hers. Or at least, she paid rent for it, which amounted to the same thing. Sophia was playing on the floor with Luna and a handful of other toys, mostly from thrift stores or dollar stores. Nothing like the abundance Maria had seen at Daniel's party. "Mama, what we eating?" Sophia asked, making Luna dance. "Rice and beans, Mija. And I made flan for dessert." It was the best meal Maria knew how to cook, the recipe passed down from her grandmother. She'd spent her grocery money for the week on ingredients, which meant they'd be eating a lot of eggs and pasta for the next few days. But she wanted to show James something real, something that came from her culture and her heart. At 4:45, Maria checked her appearance in the bathroom mirror for the 10th time. She'd changed clothes twice, finally settling on jeans and a simple blue sweater. She'd left her hair down, which she rarely did. It was easier to keep it in a bun for work. She'd put on a little makeup, then worried it was too much, then decided she was being ridiculous. She was 28 years old, and she hadn't had a man in her apartment since Sophia's father left. This shouldn't feel like such a big deal. Except it did. Because James wasn't just any man. He was someone who had seen her at her lowest, and somehow still wanted to know her better. At exactly 5 p.m., there was a knock on the door. Maria opened it to find James standing there in jeans and a Columbia University sweatshirt, holding a bottle of wine and looking as nervous as she felt.
"Hi," he said.
"Hi." Maria noticed that several of her neighbors had found excuses to be in the hallway, openly staring at the well-dressed Asian man who was clearly not from around here. "Come in." James stepped inside, and Maria watched his eyes take in the space. She braced herself for pity or discomfort, but what she saw instead looked like interest? Respect? "It smells amazing in here," he said. "That's dinner. Rice and beans. I hope that's okay. I wasn't sure what you liked." "I love rice and beans. My mother used to make a version when I was young, before she could afford to buy fancy ingredients." James smiled. "This reminds me of home." Sophia came running over, holding Luna. "Mr. Chern, Mr. Chern, look." She showed him Luna's new outfit, a paper dress Maria had made from magazine pages and tape. "That's beautiful, Sophia. Did you help make it?" "I helped. Mama did the tape. I did the colors." "Well, you're a wonderful artist." James crouched down to Sophia's level, and Maria's heart did that complicated thing again. "Want to see my room?" Sophia asked. "If it's okay with your mama." Maria nodded, and Sophia grabbed James's hand, pulling him toward the bedroom. Maria followed, bracing herself. Sophia's room was barely big enough for a toddler bed, a small dresser, and a plastic bin of toys. There was a poster of Disney princesses on the wall, and Maria had painted clouds on the ceiling herself, a project that had taken 3 weekends and made her back ache for a month. "This is beautiful," James said, looking at the clouds. "Did you do this?" "Last year." Sophia was scared of the dark, so I thought maybe if she had something pretty to look at. Maria trailed off. "It's wonderful. You're talented." "It's just paint and YouTube tutorials." "It's love," James corrected gently. "You can't YouTube that." They stood there in the tiny room, and Maria felt something shift between them. This was her real life. No pretense, no filters. And James was looking at her like he understood what every detail cost: the hours of work, the careful budgeting, the infinite small sacrifices that added up to a life. "Come on," Maria said, her voice thick. "Dinner's ready." The kitchen table was barely big enough for 2 adults and a child, but they squeezed in. Maria served the food on mismatched plates, the only dishes she owned, and James poured wine into the 2 glasses she had, plus juice for Sophia. "Should we say grace?" James asked. Maria was surprised. "Are you religious?" "My mother was. I've fallen away from it, but tonight feels like a moment that deserves acknowledging." So they held hands, Maria, Sophia, and James said a simple prayer his mother had taught him, thanking the universe for food and friendship and new beginnings. When they started eating, James made a sound of genuine pleasure. "This is incredible. What's in it?" Maria found herself smiling. "If I tell you all my secrets, what will I have left to intrigue you with?" "I think you have plenty of other intrigues." They ate and talked, and Maria was surprised by how easy it felt. James asked about her grandmother's recipe, and Maria found herself telling stories about growing up in the Bronx with her mother and grandmother, 3 generations of women in a tiny apartment not unlike this one. "My mom worked at a factory making clothes. 60 hours a week, and she still couldn't always make rent. My grandmother cleaned houses just like I do. She used to say, 'Mija, there's no shame in honest work. The shame is in not working when you can.'" My mother said something similar, James said quietly. "She cleaned houses too when we first came to America. She and my father worked themselves half to death, so I could have opportunities they never had." "Did it work?" James looked around the tiny kitchen. "Yes and no. I became successful by their measures. Wealthy, powerful, respected. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what they taught me about why any of that matters." "And what does matter?" "This." James gestured at the table, at Sophia coloring while they talked, at the simple meals shared between new friends. Connection. Purpose. Using what you have to make someone else's life better. Maria set down her fork. "That's a lovely sentiment, James. But you have billions of dollars. It's easy to talk about purpose when your basic needs are met. When you don't have to worry about whether you can afford your daughter's antibiotics or if you'll make rent this month." "You're right. And I'm not trying to romanticize struggle. I'm just saying that somewhere between my mother cleaning houses and me owning buildings, I lost something essential." "What?" "The understanding that my mother had, that every person deserves dignity. That work has value beyond what it pays. That kindness matters more than success." James met her eyes. "You have that understanding. You haven't lost it despite everything you face."
"How?"
Maria thought about it, really thought about it. "Because I have Sophia. Every choice I make, every floor I scrub, every hour I work, it's for her. That gives it meaning. Without her..." Maria trailed off, not wanting to finish the thought. "Without her, you'd be lost like me," James finished softly. They cleaned up together after dinner, which felt strange and intimate. James in her tiny kitchen, drying dishes while she washed. Sophia played on the living room floor, making Luna have conversations with her other toys. "Can I ask you something personal?" James said as he put away a plate. "You're standing in my kitchen. I think personal is off the table at this point." What happened to Sophia's father? Maria's hands stilled in the soapy water. She'd known this question would come eventually.
Miguel.
We met when I was 25, working at a restaurant while taking night classes trying to get my GED. He was charming, full of plans for the future. We were going to open a business together, travel, build a life. Maria's voice was flat, reciting facts. When I got pregnant, all those plans disappeared. He said he wasn't ready to be a father. He left before Sophia was born. I haven't heard from him since. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off without him. Maria turned to face James. But it made me understand something. I'm the only person I can count on. Sophia's only person she can count on is me. So when people like you come into our lives offering help, offering friendship, it scares me. Because what happens when you leave? What if I don't leave? Everyone leaves eventually. Miguel left. My mother died when I was 19. My father was never in the picture. The only constant in my life has been work and Sophia and me trying to build something that can't be taken away. James set down the dish towel and turned to face her fully. I understand why you're scared. But Maria, I'm scared too.
I'm scared of failing you.
I'm scared of being just another person who promises and doesn't deliver. But I'm also tired of letting fear make my decisions. What are you proposing? I don't know. Friendship? Something more? I genuinely don't know. James ran a hand through his hair. All I know is that since I met you and Sophia, I feel like I'm waking up from a long sleep. And I don't want to go back to sleepwalking through my life. Maria dried her hands slowly. I can't be your awakening, James. I can't be the project that makes you feel alive. I'm a real person with real problems, and my daughter's well-being depends on my ability to see things clearly. Then let me see things clearly too. Help me understand your world. Teach me what I've forgotten or never knew. Let me be. He paused, searching for words. Let me be useful. Not as a billionaire throwing money around, but as a person who wants to help. Help how?
James thought about it.
I don't know yet. But Maria, I have resources and connections and privileges that I've been wasting on making more money I don't need. Let me use them for something that matters.
Why?
Why us? Why now? Because Sophia reminded me what joy looks like. Because you reminded me what strength looks like. Because for the first time in years, I feel like I'm supposed to be somewhere doing something, instead of just existing. Maria leaned against the counter, studying him. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but she could also see the naivety. He didn't understand how hard life could be, how quickly good intentions could crumble under the weight of reality. But maybe that was okay. Maybe he didn't need to understand everything right now. Maybe it was enough that he was trying. Okay, she said finally. You want to help? You want to understand? Then let's make a deal. I'm listening. Tomorrow, you don't go to your office. You come with me to work. You see what I actually do, how I actually live. You take the subway at 6 a.m. You watch me clean toilets and scrub floors. You see what minimum wage buys in New York City. Maria crossed her arms. And if after all that you still want to be friends, still want to help, then we talk about what that looks like. James didn't hesitate.
Deal.
What time should I meet you? 5:45 a.m. at the 149th Street station. I'll be there. They stood there in the tiny kitchen, the sounds of Sophia playing filtering in from the living room, and Maria felt like they were standing on the edge of something, a cliff or a bridge. She wasn't sure which. James, yes. If you hurt my daughter, if you disappoint her, I will never forgive you. I don't care how rich or powerful you are. I understand. And Maria? Yes. If I mess this up, not if, but when, because I'm bound to at some point, please tell me.
Give me a chance to fix it.
Don't just shut me out. Maria nodded slowly. It was a reasonable request, more reasonable than she'd expected. They moved back to the living room, where Sophia immediately recruited James to play with her. Maria watched them build a block tower together, Sophia laughing every time it fell down, James patient and playful in a way that made Maria's chest hurt. This was dangerous. This feeling of possibility, of hope. This sense that maybe her life could be more than just survival. When James left an hour later, Sophia hugged him goodbye, without being prompted. "Come back," she demanded. "I will. Tomorrow I'm going to work with your mama." "Okay. Bye-bye." Tomorrow, he would step fully into Maria's world. And somehow, he suspected, he would never be able to step back out. The alarm went off at 4:45 a.m., and James woke with a start, momentarily disoriented. Then he remembered. Today, he was meeting Maria to experience her world. He dressed in his oldest jeans and a plain sweatshirt, consciously choosing clothes that wouldn't mark him as out of place. As he rode the subway to the Bronx, his first time on public transportation in years, he was struck by how different the city felt at this hour. There were hospital workers in scrubs, security guards finishing night shifts, delivery workers heading to warehouses. An entire parallel New York that he'd never seen. Maria was already at the 149th Street station when he arrived, wearing her cleaning uniform and carrying a small backpack. Her face registered surprise when she saw him. "You actually came." "I said I would." 1 year later, James kept his promise. He proposed on the same park bench where they'd had their first kiss, with Sophia and Daniel as witnesses. The ring was modest by his standards. He'd learned that grand gestures weren't what Maria wanted. She wanted sincerity, commitment, presence. She said yes. They were married in a small ceremony in that same park, surrounded by neighbors and friends from both their worlds, billionaires and bodega owners, executives and cleaning ladies, all gathered together because two people had proven that love could bridge any divide if you were willing to do the work. The Dignity Works Foundation grew, helping thousands of working parents across the city. The Affordable Housing Project opened, with Maria as director of community programs. She still worked, not cleaning houses but advocating for workers' rights and designing support systems that actually worked. James still ran his company, but his priorities had changed. Profit mattered, but so did people. Success mattered, but so did service. And on weekends, you could find them in the Bronx, James and Maria and Sophia and Daniel, building block towers that always fell down, eating rice and beans, looking at the clouds painted on a ceiling, living a life that proved fairy tales could come true. But only if you defined fairy tale the right way, not as rescue or salvation, but as two broken people finding wholeness together, as wealth being used for purpose instead of accumulation, as love being measured not in grand gestures, but in small daily choices to show up, to care, to stay. Luna the doll sat on Sophia's shelf, still wearing her sapphire blue dress, a reminder of the day two worlds collided in a toy shop and changed 3 lives forever. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment of kindness, one choice to see another person truly, one decision to be better than you were yesterday. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to change everything.